Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated on providing you the how-tos of marketing and networking strategies. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning into another episode of Networking with Michelle. I am so excited about today's guest. Earlier this year, I think it was around January, I was listening to the Escaping Cubicle Captivity podcast hosted by Shimeka Williams. And I love that show, but Shimeka had an astounding guest. I was like, I have to get this woman on my show. And we have Kerry Heaps today. She is the publisher of Strictly Marketing Magazine and the host of Strictly Marketing Talk Radio. She is all things marketing. She is a networking guru. I thought I knew something. But on that show, she was dropping bombs, and I'm just so glad to have her here today. Kerry, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Michelle, it's such an honor to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me. And I am just so super excited about talking with you and talking about marketing today.
Thank you so much. I was absolutely just blown away with Shimeka's show. I love marketing, networking. I know I can talk about that all day, so I'm going to try not to keep you. Please stop me at any time. But, what's your story? How did you get started?
Well, I have kind of an interesting story. I've had my business for 11 years. I just celebrated 11 years in June, actually. And thank you. I have a pretty interesting background. When I was very young, I modeled. I was in modeling and acting in my late teens, early 20s, and still participate and love that industry. And I went to school, to college. I didn't graduate. I got back out into the workforce and just tried to kind of figure out what it is I wanted to do. I just, didn't feel like anything was really a good fit for me. Had several different jobs over, the span of 10 or 11 years. I worked as a legal secretary. I worked as, in the construction industry as an executive level admin. Learned a lot, had some great jobs. Great people, great companies that I worked for, but it just never felt like it was the right fit for me. It wasn't until I got into sales. I was teaching modeling and acting classes part-time at John Casablanca, one of their schools. I've taught at a couple of different of their locations, and they had an opening for a salesperson. And a fellow coworker who was also teaching said, there's an opening, you should apply, you would be great at this. And I'm like, I don't want to do sales. I wouldn't be any good at that. And I thought, well, it piqued my curiosity. And I went ahead and I applied. I got the job, and it was an inside sales job and 100% commission. So if I didn't sell, I didn't eat, but I really excelled at it. And I really felt that I, had a really good knack for sales. It was a very self-sufficient position, which was kind of my first introduction to entrepreneurship, because as you well know, when you're on your own, if you don't eat or if you don't sell, you don't eat. You have to constantly promote yourself. So I worked that job and I really enjoyed it because there was no one standing over my shoulder. There was no one really that I was reporting to. As long as I made sales and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, I was fine. They just kind of left me alone and let me do my own thing. And I took another position not long after that in the staffing industry, working in executive level headhunting. And then I also did clerical, IT, accounting type work. And again, that was more of an outside sales position. So basically, I'd come in on Mondays and, do certain things in the office, schedule all my appointments for the week. And I was out in the field for the rest of the week and came back to the office Friday afternoon. So again, another position where I was really in control of my own time. Nobody was standing over me. I really enjoyed it. And during that course of the time, I thought, I really need to have my own business. I just kind of felt that would be a great fit for me. I enjoyed being out there, talking to different people. And I actually started my business, Michelle, to do image consulting, to get back into the modeling and acting industry. Mm-hmm. So I took a year. I planned. I worked part-time and I saved my money. I had a friend who helped me at the time. Having a website was the big thing. This was way back before social media. And I got everything together. And, when I was doing my outside sales job for staffing, I had to do a lot of networking, attend a lot of different trade shows. And part of the organizations I belonged to, they would want to start new chapters or they would try to do a membership push. And they would, I always participated in that. I was always able to get people there. I had such a flair for bringing people together, the right people. So they would always ask me, we're starting a new chapter here. We're doing this there. Can you help? And for those people who participate in working, it's a lot of work. It's not anything easy. So I thought, when I go out on my own, I think I'm going to start doing this until my image consulting business takes off. I'll start hosting networking events of my own. It'll be a great way to meet potential clients. And, I can do this. And I know enough people that, that would be a great way to bring in immediate income. So the day came, I put in my 2-week notice and I worked my 2 weeks at the staffing firm. And that Friday, it was like, wow, I'm free. I'm on my own. And it was just such a great feeling. And then that Monday morning, I got up at my normal time. And I'll never forget this. I always tell people this story because I woke up, it was very overcast. And at the time I lived in Orlando and there was like a light rain misting outside and just very dreary and overcast. I remember going to my dining room window and looking out the window thinking, what did I just do? But here it is. It's 11 years later. And I will tell you, I've had, there's tons of ups and downs with being an entrepreneur. I started out to do, image consulting, got into the networking side of things, started bringing people together at local bookstores and a cafe and working events in different areas. And my image consulting kind of went on the back burner because I just had such a flair for networking. And then I started saying, hey, help me with my sales, help me with my marketing. Mm-hmm. We started working with people one-on-one. What I've done is really evolved over the years. We have a magazine now, a Strictly Marketing magazine, and a talk radio program that goes along with that. And then, of course, we work strictly business to business, with clients, helping them with their marketing and their sales efforts. And I will tell you, everyone always thinks that it's a straight line, and it just isn't. You're going to start out on one path being an entrepreneur, and you might find there's a niche in the marketplace that you didn't think about or wasn't, sure about, and it might take you on a different path. But I will tell you the best year or best day that I've ever had working in corporate, I would not trade being an entrepreneur for that. But my worst day as an entrepreneur, I still would not trade that for my best day in corporate. I mean, there's nothing like it. And entrepreneurship's not for everyone. It really isn't. I mean, you've got to develop a thick skin and a strong stomach and a wonderful feeling if it's the right fit for you.
Right. Now, I know you went back, but I want you to kind of still stay back there and dig a little bit, because you stated you were working part-time when the sales position was brought to your attention, right?
Correct. I was.
Can you because that's a major transition. A lot of people are scared to even go into sales 100% commission because of that very reason. But can you kind of just maybe walk us through that transition from part-time to 100% commission, and then also elaborate on that second major transition from corporate into your entrepreneurship and just the mental things that you have to prepare yourself for?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I will tell you, I was teaching part-time at John Casablanca, but I did have a full-time job at that time.
Okay.
I was teaching part-time in the evenings. So I did leave that full-time job, which was salaried, and it was a great position. I mean, some of the jobs that I've left, I've had people just shake their head like, what were you thinking? It was such a great job. You made good money. You had security. You had benefits. But I just, when you have that bug, when you get bit by that bug, there's just no getting rid of it, as you well know. So it was, a lot of people looked at it like, that's crazy. I can't believe you did that. And was it scary? Yes. But two things. Number one, it was something I was extremely passionate about, the modeling and acting industry. And it was, selling to get people to sign up for classes, photography, photo shoots, and things like that. So I knew I could sell it. I mean, because I believed in it. And I still do, and I'm very passionate about it. So I knew I could sell it, but it was something I felt alive, Michelle. And I don't know if anyone has ever had that feeling when you're working. Most people look at work and say, okay, this is work. I got to go to work today. When you're doing something you love, you don't look at it that way. You really don't. I mean, you can do it all day. Like you said, you could talk about marketing all day. So could I. I mean, it's just when you're passionate about something, it changes the dynamics. It changes your mental state. And I was finding myself, even though I was teaching part-time in the evenings, I was finding myself like some of the other instructors would say, oh gosh, I got a family reunion or something going on this week. I can't teach. I'm like, oh, well, what are you teaching? Oh, it's an acting class. Oh, I'll do it. Yeah, I have time. I can do it. I'll teach, because I just loved it. And even though it was part-time, I mean, I was constantly racking up hours because I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And when the class was over, I got a little sad because it's like, wow, I just hate that. But it was a transition. But you have to get to a point where, like some people like to say, the come to Jesus meeting or the poo poo or get off the pot, scenario. I mean, you have to, or like Nike says, just do it.
Right.
You have to, at some point, you have to take action if it's really something you want to do. And that's, I have a lot of people who ask me all the time, I would love to do what you do, or I'd love to be an entrepreneur. And, can I sit down? Can we talk about it? And I'm always happy to mentor someone who wants to start their own business, because I think if it's the right fit, it's the best thing in the world for someone. It really is. And, and I didn't figure out what I wanted to do until I was in my early 30s. I mean, sometimes it takes people longer to figure out what it is they're passionate about. But when you find it, it's the best feeling in the world, no matter what age you are,
Right.
And one of the things that I recommend to people is I tell them, take an all commission sales job in your industry. If, for example, I've had people who are, accountants who work for a big firm and they want to go out on their own. And I tell them, what you need to do is, why don't you try selling, there's all these accounting software, take a part-time job and all commission and sell that. And they're like, well, no, I don't want to be a salesperson. I want to start my own business. And I'm like, what do you think you're going to be doing 99% of the time? If you are not comfortable selling yourself, nobody's going to buy into what you're doing. You have to be comfortable with what you're doing. And part of being comfortable with what you're doing is promoting yourself. One thing that I learned, Michelle, in the modeling industry early on, I had a wonderful mentor. She's still a great friend to this day, and I always bring her up all the time. But Marcia Dahl Falkenberry, she was actually on the cover of our January-February issue of the magazine talking about promotions. But she said to me when I first started in the modeling industry, because I was very shy, that was something that really brought me out of my shell. And I'll always be grateful to the industry for that. And it really got me over, learning how to take rejection and just, really dealing with life, that not everybody's going to like you. But one thing that she said to me that still sticks out to this day, and she still says it today, is that if you don't promote yourself, why should anyone else?
Right.
So, you've got to get comfortable with that. So I recommend that to people. I'm like, get out there and sell, because if you're going to have difficulty with the sales process, you're going to have difficulty. You're going to have to, a lot of people think, well, I'm going to open up the storefront and everybody's going to come running. And it doesn't work that way. You have to go out there. You have to find your clients. You have to consistently be networking, doing some type of marketing, some type of promotion. You have to constantly be out there talking about what you do. You've got to do a certain amount of media, establishing yourself as an expert. I think marketing in itself is a full-time job for an entrepreneur now.
Oh, yeah.
But it has to be done, and you got to be comfortable with that. So that is something that I recommend to people. And was it easy? No. The first month was very hard because I had a small little draw that I did, and I think I had to borrow money that month just to make ends meet. But then the next month when my commission check came in, I was able to pay that back. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but you have to take that leap. And at some point, like I saw somebody share this, and I've seen it a couple of times on Facebook, but it's a little quote, and it says, it talks about, if you don't, you have to change, you have to learn to adapt, and you've got to make a change, because if you don't change what you're doing, nothing's going to change for it. You stay in that same mindset. You've got to take that leap. You have to really get yourself out there and make some changes. And if you're not willing to take that leap, then nothing will change for you. And you're going to be in the same place you were a year ago thinking about it. It's better to try it. And even if it doesn't work, number one, you learn something about yourself. You're learning to take risk. And, you can always go back and do something else. I mean, if you quit your job and you decide to go to an all commission sales position to kind of make that transition, and it's not a good fit for you, or you feel like at least you learned, it's better to learn then than to jump in full force that, with being an entrepreneur and quitting your job and not realizing that, hey, I can't handle rejection, or I can't handle the sales portion of it, because that is a big part of having your own business. Flipping back to the other side of that, when I, decided to make that leap, I set a goal for myself. I had a timeline. I gave myself a year. I knew what I needed to accomplish within that year and what was going to happen during that time frame to get me prepared for going out on my own. And I did make that, I was able to make plans to make that transition. Like I said, I realized I had a good knack for bringing people together. The networking was going to supplement some of my income. And that turned out to be something that I still do to this day. I don't do networking events anymore, but the marketing has become a big part of our business. And had I not done that, again, I started out to do image consulting. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do this till, to meet clients until things take off with the image consulting. And it turned out to be a really, really good fit for me. Like I said, entrepreneurship is not a straight line. But yeah, that first day, that Monday, I mean, I looked out the window. I was scared. I was like, wow, what did I just do? But then later that day, I realized, the weather kind of started clearing up. And I'm like, I'm not going to, I've been preparing for this. What am I afraid of? I've been making, that transition. I knew this was going to happen. I've been preparing for it. I have events planned for next week. I'm going to be okay. But too, I realized that, and I think a lot of people don't get this, is that, when you go out on your own, you are responsible for your success and your failure. And I think that's what stops a lot of people dead in their tracks.
Absolutely.
They don't want that responsibility. And unfortunately, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that's what you have to realize. I mean, you have to, are there still things that I struggle with? Yeah, but they're at a different level. You're never, a lot of people think, well, when I start my own business, I'm not going to have any more bad days. That simply is not true. You will still have bad days. They're just a different type of bad day. Have there been times in the past 11 years, have I said, I want to quit. I don't want to do this anymore? Yeah. But, it was just a bad day and I didn't beat myself up about it. The next day was a totally different day. One thing I will say about being an entrepreneur is that, you never know what's going to happen. And at first that scared me because it's like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're going to have any clients next week. What's going to happen? And I had to, again, going back to my modeling days, listening to something that Marcia Dahl taught me is that you have to take your greatest fear and turn it into your greatest thrill. So I changed my thinking with that. And I said, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I could have another client, something new could pop up. There could be a new opportunity, a new partnership. And just by making that one little shift in my mind changed everything for me.
What are some of the differences between marketing and sales as it relates to a business owner?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, a couple of things that come to mind. First of all, with marketing and sales, both of these things are aimed at the same goal, which is to increase your revenue. Okay. And they're really very closely intertwined, marketing and sales are. And I don't think people realize how much they're intertwined, but there's still a huge difference between the two. It's kind of like going to Miami. It used to be there was only A1A that went directly to Miami. Well, now there's I-95. So you have two parallel roads that are going to the same location. You can take either one. And that's kind of like marketing and sales. You have two different ways to get there. So like in the smaller organizations, usually you find that the same people are typically performing the marketing and the sales operations, which, from a standpoint of a business owner, that's not always a good thing because marketing and sales do have enough differences that you really should have them separate. Because as your organization grows, those roles and responsibilities, they're going to become more specialized. They need to be able to work together. The marketing really needs to handle the social media side, the promotion side. They need to work with sales to say, listen, what promotions can we do? What are you hearing in the field about what customers want, potential customers, the clients that you're meeting with? What are you hearing from them? So marketing can take that information and utilize it into, a social media campaign or a contest or a promotion. Something that they can do down the line. Marketing needs to keep a good calendar of different parts, different times of the year of when is a good time to do a promotion or what type of promotion should we do. Like, for example, a real estate agent, their marketing calendar, they're going to be marketing a lot. Typically people are going to be buying homes or moving when their kids are out of school. It might be slower at different times of the year. So they might want to do some type of different promotion towards the end of the year, maybe talking about your tax return, a great time to put a down payment. So you really need to have the two work together. What's unfortunate is a lot of times, if you have somebody that's handling both of those roles, they're going to excel at one end and suffer at the other because it's very hard to find someone who has a good balance of understanding and working both of those arenas. So I always make the distinction that you really should have someone in a separate role for each of those, even if you have a small organization, even if you have to hire somebody or outsource the marketing on a part-time basis, it can be well worth your time. Because sadly, a lot of times, I see organizations that their sales team is, in California and the marketing people are in New York and they never communicate with one another. And it's disastrous.
So when would be a good time to come up with a pricing strategy? Is it a matter of getting all groups together? And when I say all groups, I'm thinking the sales team, the marketing team, and maybe the CEO in this case, if you're, a small business.
Well, I would say, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just when's the best time to get the pricing strategy in place amongst the team?
Well, two different things. I would say for those companies or entrepreneurs that are just starting out, you need to establish that from the get-go and understand that as you move forward, you're going to be doing some tweaking with that. Unexpected things come up. I always tell people with pricing strategy, tackle it early on. Now, if you're doing a promotion, everybody needs to be sitting down talking at the same time. And, again, you have to figure out, okay, if we do this promotion, because you never want to do something where you're going to be losing money. And a great example of that is Groupon. Sites like Groupon, I have seen entrepreneurs go on there and almost go bankrupt because they're cutting such a great deal that they don't realize that they feel like they're going to make it up in bulk, but there might be something that they forgot about or that they didn't think about factoring into the pricing that they're actually losing money, or maybe they're only making like $1 per sale. So, when you think about how hard you have to work and about, when you're doing a promotion, you still need to make it very value added. And I would say don't always go by price, too. You need to price it right and then add so much value that it's kind of a no-brainer for the person who's looking at it going, hey, that's a really great deal. And whether that's giving them, if you're a business coach, maybe giving them a downloadable audio copy of your book, things that you already have done that, are not going to cost you money to have printed or to have produced, that they can just be emailed to them like as an attachment or a white paper, something like that, where you're adding more value. You're not so much changing the price, but you're giving them so much value that it shows that it's still a really good deal. But I would always say in the beginning, if you're going to do a promotion that's December, I always say be safe, start 6 months out. Because again, little things are going to come up. And, sometimes too, people don't realize if you do have an outside sales force, and let's just say they're getting reimbursed for their expenses and they're out there, promoting this particular promotion for a couple of months. And then you got to compensate them for, reimburse them for those expenses, whether it's taking clients to lunch or it's, tolls or mileage. And if you're not factoring those things in, it can really hurt you in the long run. So you should always make sure that you're planning that out and making sure that you're covering all of your bases. And I would even throw in there too with pricing, making sure that whatever price you come up with, add maybe like another 5 or 10% on that just to cover yourself. Because you're going to have some people too that, they want to see if they can get a discount. And if you're able to give your salespeople a little bit of wiggle room, that always helps sometimes too. So always, give yourself plenty of time. And it's more or less just not just to plan and prepare, but for those little things that you might forget about. And it happens. It happens in the small businesses and it happens in the larger ones too.
How often should someone increase their pricing?
That's a good question. And I would say I find for companies that offer a product, an actual physical product, I think you're going to find that there's going to be a price increase every year, because if you're getting the products wholesale, I find that wholesalers tend to do a price increase on an annual basis. So if you get, a new pricing sheet in January, you're going to find, and it may only be by like 5 cents, but they're always increasing their prices. So I would say product sales probably once a year. If you're in a service industry, which most of what I do is service related, we just did a price increase last year, but we had not done a price increase in probably 5 years.
Wow.
And I will tell you, but because we waited, I shouldn't have done that. That was something that I just kind of felt like, just with the economy, let's just keep things the way that they are right now. And then when I did the price increase, because what I did is we actually went out there, we looked at what our competitors were doing. What are they charging? What are, on the high and the end. So we found that we were kind of on the low to the middle, like between the low end and the middle. Mm-hmm. So I at least wanted to get myself to above the middle, just right at the middle or just above it. So the price increase was about 10%. And I lost one client over it, but that particular client that we had was with us because of pricing only. Mm-hmm. It wasn't someone who, even though we did a great job for them, it was just based on prices. That's why they were there. So they went out and looked for someone else that could do it, cheaper, which is fine. I mean, that's, for whatever reason, that's what they felt like they needed to do. So, I would still say once a year or even every 6 months, just evaluate your pricing, see what other people are charging. And if you're finding that you are really on the low end of things, you should do a small price increase. Even if you're charging hourly, let's say you're charging $50 an hour, but all of your competitors are $75 to $100 an hour, bump it up a little bit, go to 60, or 65, because, you never want to be you don't want to be the most expensive, but you also don't want to be the cheapest either. And that's what I tell people about our services when we're dealing with business to business marketing. We are not the cheapest firm out there, but we're also not the most expensive. But, this is what we do to provide value to our clients. And because you want to attract, with pricing, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, if I do it lower, I'll get more people. And you will get people, but you're getting people based on price. And sometimes they are not the best clients for you. And I'm sure you've been through this with your business, Michelle, where these people that come to you, they're like, oh, $99, and they're a nightmare to deal with. So that $99, when it's all said and done, you look at all the time that you invested, and you've actually paid you $99, but they got $900 worth of service out of you because of how much time of yours they wasted. So, I think with pricing, you need to be smart about it because you want to attract the right people. And I do think that people, this is a really crass example, but I do think people are like dogs. I think they can smell fear. I think they can smell when you are desperate, and there are people out there, they will take advantage of that. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have to be proactive about it, be fair about it. It's just like with promotions. I see some people who will go really low with their promotions, and it backfires on them because, people think, well, you just did a promotion and you offered it for $99. Now, 2 weeks later, you're doing it for $29. Something's going on. Let me see if I'll wait and see if they go lower.
For free.
And yeah. So, and are there people out there that will do that? Absolutely. And, when you start your own business, you have to be mindful of your time. That is one mistake I see a lot of people make is they don't factor in their time with their pricing. And you need to set an hourly rate for yourself. I don't care what it is. Even if you just say, okay, I'm going to set my hourly rate at $20 an hour, factor that into your pricing because you need to be able to pay yourself. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to sell this package for $99. And if I sell 10 a day, I'll be okay. Well, that's not true because, you sell the, 10 things a day. Number one, that's not going to happen every week. It just isn't. That's not realistic. And, two, you need to be able to, still be able to feed yourself, write yourself a check every week, be able to pay yourself per se, because you've got to treat it like a business. Absolutely. And if you're not valuing your time, no one else will either.
So, I have to ask this. I'm going to put two questions together.
Okay.
Continuing with the promotions aspect, what about creating that sense of urgency, having that countdown, the sale's going to end on this day at this time. Is that effective or not effective? What's your take on that?
Well, with sense of urgency, yes, I do think it's effective. You stick with that. So if you say, let's say, for example, you're doing a sale, okay, we're doing a boot camp and we're getting ready to launch another one. It's a media boot camp, where we teach people how to get more media exposure for their business. And it's a self-paced camp. They go through it. It's downloadable recordings. They do it virtually. So it's priced at, I think, $399. We're going to be doing a promotion where if they sign up the week, I think we're giving them a week or it might be 48 hours. I have to go back and look. But we put a timestamp on it that if they sign up by this date, they get 25% off. So we have it set up as an actual landing page and it's a countdown. And if they sign up by that date, that's, they get that percentage off and they can, to be part of the boot camp. So once that ends, will you have people come to you and go, oh, I missed the deadline. I'm really sorry. Can I still get 25% off? And the answer to that is no. And here's why. Because number one, it's the promotion's already ended, so that page is expired. You can't go on there and order. And two, if it was really that important to you, you would have gotten it done. You would have signed up and gotten it done. But you will have people who will test that theory with you. And you have to stick to your guns and just sit. You don't have to be mean. I'm a little bit more, I don't want to say shorter with people, but I'm a little bit more direct. But I do tell people, look, we may have another promotion coming up. I would strongly suggest, if you see it out there, definitely take advantage of it because when it's done, it's done. We only do them at certain times of the year. So that way people, they respect that. If you tell them, oh, well, yeah, I can go ahead and do that. Number one, they're not going to sign up. I can tell you that right now. And the next time that you have a promotion, it's going to be the same thing. It's almost like a broken record. So those are people who feel like, well, if I'm acting like I'm going to do this, that contributes to my success. And it doesn't. You taking action and signing up when you're supposed to and going through the program and getting it done, that contributes to your success. So you will find that people will push that. So they work as long as you stick to your gut. And I would recommend anybody who does that, create a landing page where there's a countdown calendar or countdown clock, so that way, once it's expired, you can say, oh, the page, it's expired. That's too bad that you missed the deadline. We'll keep you in mind for a future promotion. But it's still a great deal if you sign up at the full rate. And, and sometimes you're going to have people who will go ahead and do that, but they're still going to test that theory and they're still going to ask. And you have to stick to your guns on that. You have to. Based on your sales experience, what do you think is, and even your entrepreneurship, what do you find more effective, cold email or cold call? That's a good question. And I'm a huge advocate for cold calling. And the reason I am is because nobody does it anymore. 2 reasons. Number one, it's fear. People are afraid. They pick up the phone. When I do training on cold calling, it's so funny because I talk about, when people, they get their leads, they're excited, they've got all these new leads, and then they sit there in front of the telephone and they look at the leads, they flip through them, and they might make one phone call and then they stop. It's almost like, and how I describe it to people is, it's almost like they're going to pick up the phone, Michelle, dial the number, and the person's going to come through the line like Jaws, bite their ear off. They're going to be bleeding, and they're going to have to go to the hospital. The worst thing that can happen to you is that they're going to say no, they're not interested, and you just mark them as not interested, and you move on. But sales, whether anybody wants to admit it or not, whether you do it online, offline, social media, go out and cold call in person on the telephone, it is a numbers game, and you have to work the numbers. My recommendation to people is do both. You're going to find if you use them both together, that is the most effective way. For example, if you have a list of 100 leads, and the reason I use the number 100 is because that's a good number of calls for people to make every day. It gets you used to being on the phone. You're going to start talking to people. You can set appointments, figuring out what your goal is during your sales. So let's say if you have a list of 100 people and your goal is you want to meet with 10 of those prospects. Well, that's a good number to shoot for, and it's definitely attainable. You just have to figure out what it is you want to say to them, write up a script, have that in front of you, use it, practice it, and just start calling, making notes. If you call one person and you get their voicemail, just put VM for voicemail, go on to the next call. And if you have somebody that says they're not interested, you just mark them out NA or NI, not interested, and move on to the next one. And, for every phone call that you make, I find probably out of every 10 to 15 calls you make, you're going to get one decision maker on the phone. And so let's say that's 10 people that you're talking to, 10 decision makers. Out of those 10, you should be getting at least 1 or 2 that agree to meet with you or agree to talk further. If you have people that want information, and even if they say, oh, can you call me back some other time? Or that's not something we're doing right now. Get their email, add them to your email list, send them an email, start that conversation again. Some people send out that email first, then call and say, we sent you an email about, this. Did you receive it? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Okay, you can resend it. So whether you do one first or the other, it doesn't really matter. What matters is doing the actual work. But if you can use them both together, it's a very strong combination. It's, it's all about, again, it's a numbers game. You've got to get those people on the phone. A great book that I always recommend to people, there's a book called Go for No. And the people who wrote that, Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton, it's a married couple. It's a very quick read, and it talks about rejection and about cold calling. And you have to get so many people that say no to you before you get a yes. That's just how it is. So if you talk to 10 people and, 5 of them tell you no, and then 1 of them tells you yes, then you've got to get 5 no's before you get a yes. So it's almost like you're expecting that rejection, and it's easier to take. But I find, cold calling or cold emailing, it boils down to people are afraid of rejection. They're afraid of that word no. But it hurts you worse when you don't hear it, if that makes sense.
It does. It really does. You have created a lot of content between your magazine, the radio show, of course, even doing podcast interviews such as this. How has content marketing helped your business?
It has helped it tremendously. A couple of things, and everybody needs to do this, and this is why I do it, and this is why everybody listening should do it. Number one, it's going to help establish you as an expert in your industry. I get interviewed on several different topics. Marketing, sales, I get interviewed on media quite a bit, how to get yourself out there, get exposure. And then on the flip side, with the image consulting, the acting and the modeling, I just did an interview on a radio program in California last week on the pageant industry. And it was a wonderful interview. So it helps to establish yourself as an expert. You need to approach it the right way, but you got to keep yourself out there. If you're not out there promoting yourself, again, it goes back to what we said Or if you're not willing to promote yourself, why should anyone else? So you need to provide that great content. You need to provide it in your blog. You need to write for other publications, other blogs. I'm a contributing columnist for 2 different blogs right now, one on publicity, the other one on networking. And, so you have to constantly be doing that, constantly be getting interviewed. It's exposure. You're getting exposure to other people's audiences. And it really, I've gotten tons of other interviews because it's just like you said, you listened to Shimeka's show. And that was a great, and I just love Shimeka. It was a great show. And she does. She's got a niche market there. I mean, people are afraid to take that leap. They really are. And as someone who has been there, I understand it. So, I mean, I think what she's providing is wonderful, but it gives you exposure to their audience. I mean, I have gotten clients from different shows. I've gotten other media opportunities because of being on shows. Partnerships have formed because of it. But also, too, what you need to do is you need to take that content and continually use it. That's where I find a lot of people make their mistakes. If you're not continually using that content, for example, being on your show, we'll put that on the press page of my personal website so people can see, here's another interview that I did and they can listen to it. But we also take our interviews and, when we're out there, when we're prospecting, like for our business to business clientele, helping them with their marketing, I always include on those emails, and my staff does too, oh, here's a great interview that Kerry recently did on follow-up or on cold calling. Take a listen. And that will help you close sales. Because if you have a prospect that is thinking about doing business with you, sometimes all it takes is for them to listen to a show that you've done or read an article that you've written to say, hey, this is really the person. She gets it. This is who I want to work with. So you have to continually reuse that content on an ongoing basis, promote it on social media. When you're on someone else's show, it is part of your job as a guest to promote that. And this is how you need to look at it. If you're on someone else's show and your information is so great and you know what you're talking about, why wouldn't you promote it? Why wouldn't you want other people to hear you talk about what you're good at? That's something I've never understood, but some people still have that mental block. So yeah, you need to continually promote that on social media, put it in your email list, continually reuse that, but you should definitely be using it in your prospecting. Put it in your signature line. Here's the latest interview I've done. Click here to listen. Or here's the latest post I wrote for Entrepreneurs in Vogue. Click here to read. Always be reusing your content because you never know where that's going to get shared. I had someone who had contacted me from after being on the show talking about pageants that wants to do a partnership. So you never know where it's going to lead. So you never want to. It's kind of like, how can I describe this? It's kind of like buying a set of towels at the store, dish towels or bath towels. You don't just use them once and throw them away. You're going to continually reuse those. You're going to wash them. You're going to take care of them. You're going to continually reuse them. And that's how you have to look at your content marketing, doing those interviews, writing those blog posts. Find different ways to use them. If you go to a trade show, maybe you want to take a really good interview that you did, put it on a thumb drive and hand it out as a promotional item. I mean, I could go on and on of different ways that you can repurpose that content. There's just hundreds of ways. And it's just a great way to market yourself because you're giving people valuable content. They can listen to an interview and walk away with great tips and suggestions and implement them right away. And, again, you become that go-to person in the industry, and that's what you want.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm taking notes.
Oh, well, good. See, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, that is the whole goal. When you're doing an interview, you want to provide content that people are going to pull out a pen and paper and take notes. That's what you want. That's how you know you're providing value.
Yes. And I just want to take a moment to thank you. I mean, obviously, I was blown away, when you did Shimeka's interview. And just thank you for taking the time to be with me today, provide value, not just to me, but to my audience, because you have just provided nuggets on top of nuggets. And I'm literally taking notes. I don't know if this is going to get out to the masses until I start implementing some of these things. But I just really want to thank you. And before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you and how do you define success?
2 things. Thank you. They can definitely get in touch with us, if they want to go to the site, strictlymarketingmagazine.com, or they can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is just at Kerry Heaps, my name. There's no dashes or periods in the middle. It's just my full name. Or they can visit us on Facebook. We have Strictly Marketing Magazine on Facebook. That's our Facebook page. So they're welcome to come and hang out there. And how do I define success? My definition of success is what makes you happy, what makes you feel whole, what makes you go to bed at night and sleep through the night and get up and hit the ground running early in the morning. That's how you know you're successful. And there's no one definition of success that's going to, we're not cookies. So I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer to that question. It's what makes you feel complete. It's, you have to sit here and think, it's just like myself personally, I'm living my dream. I'm doing what I love doing. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I have found that. And that's why I always hope, my wish for anybody listening is that they find what makes them feel whole. Like they love what they do. They're passionate about it. They know they're helping other people. And it's a great feeling. And unfortunately, not everybody gets to feel that. So when you know that you're doing that, again, if you find yourself, you're up in the middle of the night, because I've been there, you're restless, you can't sleep through the night, you know what you're doing isn't a good fit for you, it will keep you up at night. It will get you depressed. It will make you overeat. It will make you sleep in. That's how you know you're not happy. And don't ever think of success in terms of money, because that's not money doesn't fix things. I mean, it'll get you things, but it's not going to be what makes you happy in the end. It's having that feeling of, I can't wait to get up and do this again tomorrow. That to me is success.
Absolutely. Look, I've been nodding my head for the whole 45 minutes of this interview. Kerry, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you once again for not just your time, but for your information, your wealth of knowledge.
Oh, Michelle, it was my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I just truly feel honored and appreciate everything that you do for the entrepreneurs, not just in your local community, but around the world, everybody that, gets to listen to the podcast, and just, keep it up, keep everything that you're doing. And you're just, providing value and giving people like myself the chance to share what we know with others. It's fantastic.
All right. Remember, a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.